how should I size my fuel injectors and what size map sensor do I need? Sounds pretty simple, right? But we hear these all the time because people often come in and say, hey, how come the manufacturer only gives me just enough injector to fuel the horsepower of my car? Or why does my map sensor only read 1.3 bar? Why don't I get a 3-bar map sensor for the factory? Why don't I get injectors that are twice the size of what I need? It really doesn't cost anymore, right? And in fact, no, it doesn't cost anymore. But manufacturers do this for a reason. And let's talk about fuel injectors first, then we'll get to map sensors and other sorts of sensors. So fuel injectors, we usually measure them in two different ways. One can be cc's per minute, the other can be pounds per hour, okay? So one is measuring volume, one is measuring mass. Which one's better to do it with? Well, I prefer to use mass, and that's because when we have our calculations about air-fuel ratios, for example, we're usually talking about mass ratios. When we say an air-fuel ratio of 10:1 is stoichiometric for E85, well, that means 10 pounds of air needs 1 pound of E85 to react completely. Why is pounds per hour important? Well, if we know how much horsepower we're making, we know approximately how much airflow we're going to need, and that tells us then how much fuel we're going to need. So we can run a quick calculation on that. For example, if I have an engine that makes 500 horsepower, I know that's going to need approximately 50 pounds of air per minute, which equates to about 3,000 pounds of air per hour. Now, let's pick a fuel type. In this case, we're going to use E85. This has an air-fuel ratio, stoichiometric ratio of 10:1, which means at full power, we're probably going to run about 0.8 to 0.85 lambda. So it's going to actually be, let's call it 8.5 to 1. So 8.5 to 1 AFR. And if we divide 3,000 by 8.5, well, that's going to tell us that we need approximately 320 pounds per hour of fuel, right? So 320 pounds per hour of fuel, and then we can say, okay, well, how many injectors do we have? And if we have 8 injectors, that means each injector will need to flow 40 pounds per hour. We can always go bigger, right? We can go to 80 pounds per hour, 120 pounds per hour, even in some cases 200, 220 pounds per hour injector. So why don't we just naturally tell everybody, hey, get the biggest injector you can fit in your car. That way you'll never have to worry about fuel again. Well, the problem becomes not so much in what we do at full throttle with our injectors, but what we're doing the rest of the time. So I'm talking about idle. I'm talking about part throttle performance, right? And if we have a really big injector, it becomes very, very difficult for us to idle and drive the car at light loads in an effective manner. And that's because the injector opening time becomes very, very small. What am I talking about there? Well, we talk about needing 50 pounds per minute of air to make 500 horsepower. That same engine might only need 1 pound per minute to idle. So 1/50th of that amount, right? And if we're running, let's say 80 pound per hour injectors, we know at 50 pounds per minute, they're gonna be running at a 50% duty cycle. So if we're gonna run them down at 1 pound per minute at idle, that means they're gonna be at a 1% duty cycle. What does that mean? Well, 1% at say 1,000 RPM is gonna be, we have about 120 milliseconds of time at that speed to actually inject fuel in a port injection engine, which means that injector opening time is only gonna be 1.2 milliseconds at idle. That's a very, very small amount. Now, we can command a 1.2 millisecond opening time, and we'll usually get pretty good response, but there's something else to consider there, and that is we have some other pulse width limits that we have to be aware of. So injectors are not instantaneous when we tell them to open. There's something called injector latency, which is basically how long it takes for the injector to open once we command it, once we add the voltage to that injector. That latency for most injectors that we deal with these days could be anywhere between 0.5 milliseconds to 1.5 milliseconds. So now our latency becomes almost as large as our opening time. Again, with properly calibrated injectors from a high quality company, we can get very good latency data, but then they also have to consider the idea of cylinder to cylinder balance, right? Now, is each injector gonna flow the same amount? Does each injector have the exact same latency time? No, they might be 1% off, 2% off, but when we're talking about a very, very small pulse width like that, it becomes an issue. Now imagine I go from my 80 pound per hour injector to 160 pound per hour injector. So now I'm having to open it half as much as we were before, so that pulse width becomes even smaller. This is why bigger injectors don't always make sense, especially for street-driven cars. Once we start to get to those large injectors, for most cars, it becomes about somewhere around 1,700 cc's per minute or bigger, or approximately 170 pounds per hour. We start to have issues with idling, especially on gasoline. Why gasoline versus E85? Well, remember, gasoline actually has an air-fuel ratio of 14.7 versus 9.0 for E100. That means we need basically 33% less fuel at that point, right? So we're going to be basically opening the injector 33% less, 40% less on gasoline than ethanol. That means our pulse width gets even smaller still. That's a big deal. So all those things are problematic for us. Now on direct injectors, it becomes an even bigger issue. And that's because on direct injectors, we actually have typically much higher flow rates. For example, on a factory GM V8, your direct injectors might have a flow rate of 140 to 170 pounds per hour from the factory. Much, much bigger. Why are they so big? Well, because we have less time to inject with direct injection engines. With port injection engines, we can pretty much inject for the entire engine cycle. Even if the valve is closed, we can keep injecting fuel. It'll get sucked in once the valve opens up again. But with direct injection, we can typically only inject from the time the intake valve opens to the time the piston begins to come up on the compression stroke. So we have basically half as much time to inject with a direct injection engine. That means that that same size injector effectively can only deliver half the fuel it would if it was a port injector. That's a big deal. So that injector gets sized larger, and on top of that, it's operating at much, much higher pressures. Your port injector, one of these right here, this is from an old Honda, is going to operate somewhere around 60 psi of pressure, plus or minus depending upon boost. Your direct injector here is going to operate somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 psi, dramatically more. Now that does some good things for us. It gives us a lot of atomization, good mixture, good mixing of the fuel in the chamber, a lot of charge cooling, but it also means that at very, very small openings, we're talking about minuscule amounts of time involved to inject that fuel. That's why direct injectors tend to be more expensive and also have much, much more detailed calibration data in your ECU. If I was to compare an older LS engine versus a modern LT engine from GM, port versus direct, there is so much more injector data on the LT engine because we have to understand exactly how much current's flowing through them. We have to understand the pressure they're operating at, the pressure they're experiencing in the chamber, when our injection times are going to be. These things are less important on port injection than they are in direct injection. That's why direct injection requires a lot more work to get calibrated right, and why who you buy your direct injectors from also makes a difference. If your company that you're buying DI injectors from does not provide you with very, very detailed data on how to calibrate this stuff, you're always going to have issues with making those DI injectors work properly. Now let's talk a little bit about our sensor ranges. Now this is a similar sort of issue. Why don't we just put a 5-bar map sensor on every single engine we do? Whether we're running 10 pounds of boost, 20 pounds of boost, 30 pounds of boost, we won't need anything else, right? Well, the problem for that becomes in a couple ways. One, we have to understand, is our sensor going to be operating on a frequency or a voltage output? So most sensors these days are going to be voltage. Your map sensors, oil pressure, coolant temperature sensor, all that sorts of stuff is going to be a voltage. But your mass airflow sensor is oftentimes going to be a frequency. And the reason I say that is because we're talking about a range of operations. So most sensors that we deal with on the voltage side are going to be 0 to 5 volts. A mass airflow sensor frequency is somewhere probably between 0 and 15,000 hertz. Pretty wide range there. And the question becomes then, what sort of resolution do we have within that range? If we're running a map sensor, for example, and it's a 3-bar map sensor, which means it's going to cover up to 28 or 29.4 psi of boost, or basically we're talking about actually 0 to 43 psi absolute, okay? So that 0 to 5 volts has to cover that range there, which means 1 volt is going to be equal to approximately 8.5 psi. Now, if we have very, very high resolution ECU, that's not such a big deal. But on something like an older Subaru, like say an EJ20, we have something called a 16-bit ECU. So there is far less resolution in the data. So that volt that we have is divided up into a smaller segment. And that means that each segment has to cover more voltage. And in doing so, we lose some resolution. Now, is that going to be a big deal running full boost? No. But if you're trying to optimize emissions, fuel economy, all those sorts of things, that bigger sensor is going to cause you to have some error or some resolution error in there. And that can be a problem. With map sensors, if we have a 15 kilohertz map sensor, well, if we're going to measure up to say 500 grams per second of airflow, it's not such a big deal there because we have much wider resolution. So something that's going to be frequency limited is probably going to be less of a big deal than something that is going to be voltage limited on the sensor output. So basically what we're trying to tell you today is size your sensors and size your fuel injectors appropriately to what you're looking for. What's appropriate? Well, figure out what horsepower level you want and then size your injectors maybe 20% bigger than that. I wouldn't go any bigger than that unless you know you're going to be jumping up in a lot of horsepower in the near future. Sensor-wise, give yourself some room. If you're planning on running 25 pounds of boost, you should probably go ahead and get yourself at least a 3-bar sensor. I would probably recommend something even a little bit bigger, 3.5 bar or a 4-bar sensor, so that you have a little bit of extra room. But most people don't need a 5-bar or a 7-bar sensor. That's for something that's gonna be running pretty much drag only or land speed, and they're not really worried too much about idle resolution, part throttle, vacuum, that sort of thing. For a naturally aspirated car, there's really no need to run anything more than a 1-bar sensor because you're rarely gonna see anything more than that. Factory naturally aspirated Subaru and Toyota sensors are typically 1.3 bar. Factory Honda sensor for older Hondas is 1.7 bar. So you can see up to 5 or 10 pounds of boost in those sensors and not have any issues. And really for most cars, even if you're adding a mild turbo kit, 1.7 bar is probably enough for a lot of stuff. But once you start adding more boost, you're gonna have to upgrade that sensor and decide what's appropriate for you. All right, if you like this, please like, subscribe, and we'll see you back soon.